Okay, so we have hit the big finale of season 5 of Better Call Saul, Something Unforgivable, written by Peter Gould and written also by Ariel Levine. And this episode was directed by Peter Gould. I'm going to split my review up into two parts. First, we're going to talk about the Kim and Jimmy side of the story, and then we'll go check out what's going on with Nacho and Lalo and Gus. So the main mindset you have to get in about this episode in your head to really fully appreciate it and to understand where they're going with this is just to go to the character of Kim in the sense of the big question this season is asking and presenting is, was Kim Wexler always this person deep down that we're seeing now, this Giselle character, this slippin' Kimmy, or was this really something she admired in Jimmy and is becoming that from watching him and observing him, and that he is fully the influence there, or is it somewhere in the middle? Did he just bring this out in her? Who is she really as a person? What is the path she's really going to take? And it's a big shift this episode because it's really shifting gears from this being full-on Jimmy into Saul, and now we're seeing this like transformation of Kim, and it's adding another layer to this story of Better Call Saul. So we see this episode continues right where we left off, with Kim and Jimmy at their apartment right when Lalo leaves, and now Jimmy's filling her in on what exactly happened, the full story here. And Kim's not like totally freaked out by this. She's kind of rolling with the punches at this point and adapting well. But the part that's freaking out Jimmy this whole episode is like, Kim is this like excited kid now about this whole lifestyle. It's almost like that guilt you feel of getting your friend maybe into pot for the first time, and they're now just overindulging in a sense. And you know where maybe a bad choice may lead. You know the consequences. And that's kind of where Jimmy's at, where he's come back from hell now in that whole experience in the desert and knows the dark side of this whole lifestyle. And that's where this guilt is coming from for Jimmy and how he feels responsible for making Kim this way. And that's where it leads to the line where they're in this hotel here and he's like, I think I'm bad for you. And she's like, you crossed the line. You're not going to do it again. End of story. Goes to sleep. Where Jimmy's just sitting up in bed, doesn't go to sleep so easy. Kim's just like living the life here, not really worrying too much. Where Jimmy really knows how crazy a person Lalo is, and that Kim could just walk out that hotel door and get shot. And you see this, Kim the next morning is just dressed to go to work. And she says to him, in response to him selling her on just staying at the hotel and going to the spa, she's like, you don't think it's safe. And she just comes to the terms like, look, we need to keep our eyes open, but get on with our lives. Saying there's a police station near the courthouse. She's only 3 miles from the hotel. But Jimmy, again, just knows how serious the situation is and that Kim's still taking it a little too lightly. This just comes from experience and trauma. So that's why he freaks out and calls Mike here. And we'll get to that scene with Mike and Jimmy, but first I want to touch on Kim's situation at the courthouse. We see she goes to Grant and says, I want more PD overflow. Let me have the tricky ones. And this leads to talking about her doing cases on felonies. And she literally takes 20 for that day. This is crazy. This is a crazy transformation for Kim now. She's really going all in. And she likes helping the little guys, but now she's going towards like the more interesting side of it that Jimmy's always been attracted to, the fun cases, you would say, which is felons. And they're more of a challenge. And it's interesting because with Kim going down in this back office and seeing all these cases, it's a very powerful scene and a big transition for Kim. Now she's walking kind of towards this darker side. And it sets up really interesting storyline for next season. That's what a lot of this episode does. It's a finale, but it really almost feels like it could have worked as a premiere of a season where it's setting the stage for a crazy season 6. And a big part of that to me was just like, okay, if Kim's going to represent felons now, that just endless possibilities of people she could represent from the Breaking Bad universe. I would love to see her. Dream thing would be to see her represent Jesse Pinkman for some kind of case. I think that would be kind of cool, but we'll see. But you see Kim holding a box of these cases, runs into Howard in the elevator. It's crazy to think, like, we haven't seen these two together on screen in so long. And she informs him that she quit. And he's shocked by this. He's like, oh, well, Rich let you go? Who would leave Schweigert and Coakley? And he's like, what about Mesa Verde? So this leads him to just fill Kim in now on Jimmy's antics because he believes Jimmy has to have something to do with Kim leaving a great place, a decision only a crazy person would make. But when he tells Kim about all of Jimmy's shenanigans, she just laughs at it. But Howard says a lot of truth to this situation and says, no person in their right mind would act how Jimmy has been acting. And then he says no one in the right mind would drop Mesa Verde. And then that's just something that sets her off. Especially him saying Jimmy had something to do with it. That is her soft spot and claiming that she's not being independent. She's making choices based off Jimmy. And that goes to that debate I'm talking about. Or what is really Kim Wexler? Is she following the footsteps of Jimmy, or is this who she always deep down was as a person? And it's just bringing it out. And she says to Howard, that's insulting. But Howard says truth here. He's like, that man needs help. Howard really is just a sensible person at this point and likable, where he's dealing with really two crazy people now in Kim and Jimmy. And he wins this because he gets the mic drop moment where he says, you know who really knew Jimmy? Chuck. Boom. Howie Ham for the win. Because it's true. I mean, we're just seeing Jimmy become the man Chuck predicted. And I love that the next scene, the transition would be to Jimmy knocking on Mike's door, and then he does the doorbell knock over and over, just showing a guy who clearly needs help. But you see where Jimmy's coming from. He wants answers from Mike. He's really pushing onto someone like Mike because, like he says, if anything happens to her, he doesn't know what he would do. He's freaking out over Kim here. And Mike hearing that got him to break a bit because he, again, that's his little soft spot where it's like he doesn't want someone innocent like Kim to get killed. So he eases Jimmy's mind a bit and tells him Lalo is going to die tonight. Just hearing like that's crazy too, because now knowing the end of this episode, you just know stuff is going to be insane next season, because this mission with Mike and Gus and Jimmy and Kim thinking that it's going to be a success. Everyone's going to think this worked with Lalo, and it doesn't in the end. So him surviving in the end is going to affect everybody's stories for next season, and it's just conflict everywhere, which only is a recipe for fascinating television, but we'll get more into that. So we see now with Jimmy laying in bed at the hotel, we get that shot I always bring up and they love to use, where it's half of his face is in the shadow, half of it's not. Again, the duality of this character. One side Jimmy McGill, one side Saul Goodman. And he tells Kim most of the truth, where he says that Lalo is in Mexico, but he's not going to bother him again. He's staying there. He's been informed by his guy. Doesn't tell Kim the part that they're actually sending out a team to kill him. And she's like, so we're safe? And he's like, yeah. And this is like a big relief for Kim. And this is something that also you could just see how great Ray Seehorn portrays the emotion of Kim in this moment, because like now she's even more excited. She's like, okay, you know, my instinct to follow this path now, I just survived a crazy thing. I can do this. This is like giving her a confidence bump. Like, let's go. Now we don't have to worry about this. It's like a win in her eyes. And that's why she says to Jimmy, like, so what's wrong? It's over. And he's like, this time. And she's like, not going to be a next time. So again, she's like this excited kid right now. And he's like, Kim, don't you want to just go home? Jimmy is shot at this point and just wants to just bring this down. Really, the tables have turned, but Kim's riding high now. And now, when we see them eat dinner in the hotel and Kim convinces him to stay there, you see how they're filming Kim. They have now started giving her that effect I talked about they always use with half of Jimmy's face in the shadow. Now they're doing it with Kim in this episode, which is very interesting. And that's like the half Kim Wexler, half Giselle, or half slipping Kimmy. And she's becoming now this duality of a character. And you see, she's like, so what's next with Howard? And this is like shocking Jimmy, because when she informs Jimmy about how Howard came to her, you know, Jimmy's expecting her to kind of reprimand him a bit about what he did, because it is crazy things and he knows that. But she doesn't, and she calls out Howard for just being an a-hole. And it's kind of shocking Jimmy now seeing Kim really go to this dark side. She's suggesting like to shave his head, put chlorine in the pool. But it's still going to hit that side of Saul Goodman that he likes this. He's seeing the one he loves kind of come up with ideas like him. So he kind of goes with it, and then he's suggesting the Nair to use instead. And then they're like pillow talking in bed together, and it's this like romantic thing where they're going back and forth. You can look at it like Saul Goodman and Giselle just talking at this point about how they're going to take care of Howard. But then Kim suggests the big con, setting up Howard for misconduct. And this would settle the Sandpiper case. And like they say, the lawyers get 20%. They get paid, which is, we find out, $2 million about. So I want to jump now to that last scene with these two, where back to that theme about ice cream in this season. And they're both indulging in it now. Again, I always say the ice cream's representing that sweetness of sin here. And we go back to the old episodes with the ants on the ice cream. And that's like everyone jumping on and latching on to Saul's bad choices and him having to suffer that now and the ice cream melting. And now they're both engaging in the ice cream. But some great little touch here with the writing is when Saul says, I'll have a little of everything, meaning the flavors. But he goes, actually leave out the mint chip, which was the flavor he had in that ice cream cone that had the ants attack it. It's just perfect. That would actually set him off and be traumatic to him now to even see mint chocolate chip ice cream or eat it. So they talk about what they would do with this money from Sandpiper if they got it. And Kim's saying she would open a pro bono practice and really give representation to the regular people that would only be given to someone who's like a millionaire. So this is a great concept, a just noble idea for Kim. It's just funny that Jimmy counteracts that with like, I was thinking more of like a house. And he's like, Kim, this is not a bar trick. This is scorched earth. We would have to hurt Howard bad, and he doesn't deserve never being a lawyer again. It's just funny hearing that also being tables turned situation, because we know a whole story was here of a possibility of Jimmy never being a lawyer again. And he would have most experience about that feeling. So he knows how cruel that is to even Howard. But look at Kim here. She's like, this is where it's really starting to scare Jimmy, where she's like, we're talking about a career setback for one lawyer. And like Chuck always said about Jimmy is that he's a man where the ends always justify the means. This is exactly what Kim is doing. Because that's where Jimmy's like, yeah, I get it. You can help people if you get this money. So it's her justifying like, oh yeah, Howard pays a price. It's one person, but it justifies opening this pro bono case and helping a bunch. It's a Saul Goodman mindset here. And now Kim's thinking that way. And that's why Jimmy calls her out. I was like, Kim, it's not you. He's like, you're kidding me, right? And she gets up, turns around, and gives him the quick draw. Very similar to the end of last season when Jimmy turns around and points 2 fingers at her and says, it's all good, man. But this time the tables are turned with, instead of Kim being stunned, it's Jimmy being stunned at the person he thought he really knew in Kim. Showing a different side now. I actually wish they ended the episode with this scene like they did last season, where they ended with that kind of scene. I get it's exciting to end it with Lala walking away, but again, at the end of the day, this is Better Call Saul, and they should keep that impact and focus on this is the most important story. It's the main story of the show and the season on it. So I thought that was strange they had that be the second to last scene and not end on that note. But that's just a little nitpick of mine. So on that note with Kim, though, it's going to be really interesting now to see the reaction to this, because I really thought it was great, and I think it's, again, just posing that question now of, was this Kim Wexler all along deep down, and now it's brought out, and that Jimmy's brought out the monster, or she just impersonated Jimmy Way and this really isn't her, and she's going to screw herself in the end. I think it's a very interesting route to go, and it makes sense why they didn't kill Kim, because they got to explore this storyline with her and finish out this great character in Kim. However, I could see people reacting to it, maybe not buying it, so I'm interested on your thoughts on this in particular, and they might think it's a stretch that they're doing this with Kim. I'm really interested to hear takes on that. So let's jump into the Nacho, Lalo, Gus side of things. So we see with Gus and Mike, Gus is actually at the site of the chicken joint that got burnt down. The importance of that in this scene is because when Mike shows up and tells him about Lalo being in Mexico, Mike is still pleading here like, we should just let Nacho go. He'll just be in the way. And Gus still won't budge, and he just sees an opportunity to use Nacho as an inside man for his SWAT team to communicate with. And the importance of it being at the chicken joint is because it being this burnt down place that angers Gus, that Lalo did this to him and he had to let it happen. It's like, no, Gus is led by revenge and anger. It's going to cloud him from just letting someone like Nacho leave. It's just not worth it to him. That's not his main motivation. So it's just reaffirming that, him being around that and taking that burnt flyer of the chicken joint, as that's his number one goal, is to get his revenge and justify to himself keeping Nacho there. So I love we get to see the house of Lalo here, and poor Nacho's trapped with him, has to meet his family. It's interesting you see that there's like a lot of innocent people here, older people, and Nacho takes note of that. It was probably the most likable scene for Nacho to me was when he was on the phone and he's actually told about Gus's plan. It's happening at 3 a.m. to be out and get out of there, and he actually asks like, it's going to be clean, right? There's innocent people here. Like, he even still thinks about that when he's really just got to get his own butt out of here. So it just shows the difference of Nacho compared to a lot of these other gangsters and the good side of him. And I love Lalo just picks on this one kid to get his stuff. Total psychopath. And what's hysterical is later on, that same kid is the person Lalo puts in front of him to save himself from getting shot. The type of man Lalo really is. But you see, Lalo says to Nacho, if Don likes you, he'll give you a bump up. And he's like, if he doesn't like me, he's like, you'll be fine. Which is total BS, and it just adds more stress to Nacho, where it's like, this guy's just trying to get out of here, and now he has to impress Don Eladio and act like he's got to work for a promotion that he doesn't want. I mean, the amount of work Nacho has to do to just get freedom is ridiculous. It sucks for him, and he's doing a great job for Gus. He's become Lalo's best friend. You see Lalo, even when Nacho's talking to Don, is like smiling and just watching him and making sure he does it right. He wants to see him grow. He likes Nacho. So he's a success on Gus's mission like that, and he's not getting any reward from Gus for that. And now he's got to impress this guy Don, who's not easy to impress and who could kill him at the flip of a switch. So it's interesting that Bolsa here has to kind of keep Don Eladio calm a bit, because Don Eladio sees the money's short. And he's like, oh, don't worry, Gus has it under control. We had some bad luck. And Donaldi's like, bad luck. So this is just showing Lalo's plan go into effect, that the way to push Gus out is for him not to produce money. And you see Lalo's just running on this, where he's a big kiss up to Don Eladio, gets him a car, has money in the frunk of the car. And you see Eladio loves it, and he says to Bolsa, see, this is showmanship. So we see this big moment for Nacho here, where his character's kind of coming full circle. He's with Don Eladio, and Don Eladio's like, how will you make money? And Nacho's like, biker gangs. And he's like, so you're going to start a war? But Nacho's still on top of his game, somehow through all this anxiety says, no, I'm going to turn them against each other. So Don Eladio likes this. He says he's a businessman. He's nailing his promotion interview here. And Don Eladio says to Nacho, what do you want? And Nacho says, respect. Make my own decisions, go my own way. I don't want to be looking over my shoulder. This is total truth for Nacho. I just interviewed Michael Mando again for the second time. It's a brand new interview. Check it out after this. He talks about this scene in particular and just says some amazing stuff. So please make sure to watch. He goes into detail better than I ever could. So, and this is just great writing, because then Don Eladio says, you're in the wrong business, my friend. It's just, ain't that the truth? So like last episode where I said I was dripping sweat, standing up and clenching butt cheeks, watching the Kim, Lalo, and Jimmy scene, this happens again now, where Nacho is trying to get out of this place. But of course, Lalo's just sitting outside by the fire. And I gotta say, this acting by Michael Mando here was my favorite he's done the show so far. The fear in his eyes was just spectacular. And the writing here was so good. And they give Lalo such great villainous lines where he's like, I get my best ideas when everyone else is asleep. And he's like, people would call that a curse, but I like it. And then Nacho's like, I'd rather get shut-eye. But Lalo goes like, and yet here we are. Just sharp writing, and it's just showing you too where Nacho's just living this motivation out to save his father, turn his life around from all the mistakes he made. And originally setting himself up as someone who didn't sleep. And now he's someone who really does just want shut-eye. So it's just really great TV here. And you know they kept Lalo alive because this villain is amazing. I think he's probably come out even better than they ever expected. So they want him for the ride here. So it makes sense they kept all these great characters alive for the final season. Because as much as, which shows it's such a big moment and always really effective when you have like a big death and everyone talks about it, but then you also pay the piper because then you've lost a great character. So I think they know they don't want to do that. They want to get it that if they're going to have those big moments, have it in the final season, finish out these storylines. People are loving watching Lalo on the screen. People love watching Kim and Nacho. So they're like, look, keep him here. Why not? You don't want to just sacrifice for just to have that one big moment. The show is almost too good for that. So we see now Nacho literally starts the fire in the kitchen, opens the gates. I love the shot to it. Nacho's shadow right there. The last we see of him, and he runs away, hopefully saying goodbye to his former self. But man, Lalo is a tough son of a bee here. He survives the wrath of Gus Fring. I really love the part of this action sequence where he shoots through the escape tunnel. That was really cool. But you see, all these home workers died here. These innocent people that Nacho was talking about. And you see Lalo pins down the man whose face he burnt. And this guy's like, oh, there's a middleman. I don't know who it was. And Lalo's like, that's okay. I know who it was. So he obviously knows this is Gus. And he says, call them and tell them it was done. And that shot when Lalo turns around and sees the drink sitting there, where he was sitting with Nacho, realizing Nacho, total turncoat, a rat. And then he actually sees his favorite cook there, dead on the ground. Oh boy. Lalo is furious. This sets up a crazy season 6 situation. I just want the next episode now. And I think you gotta look at it as like we've had such great episodes now from like, I would say episode 6 on, Wexler vs. Goodman, to here. And this kind of more, it was that finale that kind of angled more as setup for the next season, where some finales kind of will just go full-on intense climax, but I think that really was the last episode, so it made sense, and it makes you just wonder, where could we go next season? This just seems so exciting, and a lot of just kind of character changes in a really interesting way, and you're gonna have this all-out Lalo going for revenge, and this war with Gus, and Kim now, what will she be like? Who will we see? And how will this affect Jimmy? So as an episode as a whole, I'm giving it a 9.5. I think that's fair. And I would also say this is the best season of Saul. It's close. I really love season 2 and I really love season 3, but I think this had the best episodes in it. I wasn't crazy over the beginning of this season, but you know, from 6 on, just really up there with Breaking Bad-esque level of television. Let me know down below what you thought of this episode and what you thought of the season as a whole, where you would rank it. I'd love to see some season rankings, some episode rankings from this season. Bring it all. And please make sure to check out my new review of Michael Mando. It's the second time he's come on. This one's really, really fun. He breaks down the finale, gives us an idea of maybe what's to come. You don't want to miss it. That will be linked down below. And yeah, I enjoyed this season with you guys. Please stick with me. I'm going to be doing a bunch of shows that are coming on HBO, Apple TV+, a bunch of dramas, so you don't want to miss any of those. Please subscribe. Stay with me. I need all the support I can get. I appreciate every single one of you, all your comments. I read every single one of them, so I hope you had as much fun as I did talking about this show and this season. I'm definitely obviously going to do season 6. The sucky thing is, like, when is that even going to come out? I mean, we're in quarantine right now. They're not filming. And the show always takes a while anyway to come out for the new season, so I hope all the actors aren't just all wrinkles by that point. Dear Lord, it might be like 2 years, but it is what it is. And yeah, please just make sure to follow me at SteveVarley1 on Twitter and Instagram for more of me. And I'll see you next time.